manager my season. You gonna sit between us? I am. And Nick wouldn't tell me what he was wearing.
Might use that first.
I told you I'm gonna be Nick
Reach is
Maddox.
better.
Oh, Nick Maddox. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm gonna be. He really wants to be Friday.
Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Deloge.
Oh, you ain't right. Lodge.
Just a Deloge.
Yep, everybody.
Who else we got?
It's a lady.
John Daly. Did everybody notice John left our meeting earlier today?
We had a canvassing board meeting
Didn't he? Oh, right. You talked
that
about
I probably
that.
should be
Okay.
at.
That was a joke.
Oh, my bad, I missed it.
Y'all didn't give us
Right over my
another
head.
one of these. I got about 4 of them.
Me too.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order because it looks like we have a quorum. And from time to time, we have meetings that are, I don't want to say more important than others, but some that have some long-standing and long future-looking impacts, and I think this one probably does. So having said that, Mr. Executive Director, are there any agenda modifications today?
From staff, you will see that there was one modification to the initial minutes that were distributed, and as well, there is one additional presentation and award that we are receiving.
Okay. Having done that, I'm going to pass off to you to move on with the meeting.
Okay, very good, sir. Grab my trusted clicker. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for coming out. If you do have comments that you would like to provide, please do direct back to the, there you are. Thank you, Commissioner Deloge. We do encourage you to fill out a speaker's card and then bring it up to the forefront so we can incorporate. You've gone through that. All right, so informational items and presentations. We have the chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee here, Mr. Fleckenstein, I believe.
And Neil, before you come up, just so everyone understands, the speakers we're going to be taking after the presentation instead of before. So if you do plan to speak, as Ben said, please get your speaker cards in, but we'll actually take your comments after our presentation.
And I believe Mr. Alan Stucks, Vice Chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee, is going to be speaking. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Alan Stucks. I'm the Vice Chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. The Blueprint Citizens Advisory Committee held a meeting on Thursday, October the 13th, and the following issues were presented. The Citizens Advisory Committee listened to a presentation from staff on the long-term strategy plans for our community on economic development. Mr. Al Latimer, excuse me, the new director of the Office of Economic Vitality was introduced to the Citizen Advisory Committee. The Office of Economic Vitality staff provided a detailed walkthrough of the new strategy plan along with a presentation from the Vision First advisors. Highlights during the presentation were the 4 goals of the strategy plan, 6 key initiatives, and 3 cross-cutting strategies. As you will soon hear more about later as staff and the Vision First advisor present to you the economic development plan for our community. The new proposal structure for engaging the community was also presented and discussed, as well as the role of the Citizen Advisory Committee in the process. In short, the Citizen Advisory Committee will continue to follow its charge to serve in the advisory capacity to the IA. The Citizen Advisory Committee discussed the plan with the staff and the Vision First advisor and were excited about the future of economic vitality in our community. The details of the strategy plans are on the board's agenda for today's meeting, and so we will leave the details of their plan to the Office of Vitality team. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. How about now we do an introduction of our new director?
Sure thing. I have to tell you, commissioners, you've all, yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, I think at this point in time, you've all had the opportunity to meet somebody that we are very, on behalf of the county administrator, city manager, thrilled to introduce to the community. Al comes to us as the new economic development officer, the keystone, if you will, toward implementation of the economic development strategic plan for the entire community that you're going to be considering. And what a great time for all of us, what a great time for Al. As you probably recall, the selection committee, representative of some tremendous leaders. I see Steve Evans in the room. Thank you for your service. So a little bit about Al. 30 years in economic development across the state of Florida. Was a component of the team that helped craft the legislation that created Enterprise Florida, the state economic development office. Helped recruit the Jaguars to Jacksonville. He's a former NFL player, and that's indicative of the following. He is a tremendous team player. I think that is what really impressed the committee. It's what's impressed those who are working with him and the team that now serves under his leadership. And with that preamble, it is a pleasure to introduce Al Latimer, our new OEV director.
Thank you, Ben. And I just want to say I look forward to continuing to work with the IA members and the community and Team Tallahassee, which includes our broad network of stakeholders, to move this community forward to a place where we all know we can be. In a little bit, we're going to have a presentation on the strategic plan, and in my 30 years in economic development, it is one of the best strategic plans I've seen, and I look forward to working with you to actionalize this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Before we go on, I just a note of a personal comment here. It was discovered when we met. We actually went to high school, two different high schools that were a couple miles apart. And what many people don't know is we both lettered in high school. Al played football and I played tennis. Probably can't tell that by looking at us side by side now, but it's an honor to be able to work with Al.
And they both had afros.
It had to be a hair joke, right?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we're very excited. We're coming into our third year of celebrating all the different entrepreneurial activity that continues to grow and shape the creative economy of our community. Bringing and giving a presentation briefly on what is to be highlighted in November, which is Entrepreneurial Month across the country, including here in our Florida's capital community, is Christina Paredes, Deputy Director of OEV.
Thank you very much. Again, we're proud to announce another round of entrepreneur activities celebrating E-Month. We've pulled together over 12 partners throughout the past 3 months, and there are 20 events on the E-Month calendar this year, and you'll see a flyer in front of you that announce each one of those events. OEV will be hosting 1 Million Cups in partnership with DOMI. We'll also be sponsoring Finance Friday and sponsor in partnership with First Commerce Credit Union. And we're also sponsoring the Quarterly Advocacy Forum with the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce and Shop Small Saturday in partnership with FAMU SBDC. And we're very excited to announce these events. There's over 22 of them listed on there. We are still actually getting requests to add it to the online calendar, and we're looking forward to a robust month full of many activities. We encourage you to promote and share on social media. We'll be sending the flyer in front of you electronically for you, and we'd be happy to deliver copies to your office so that you may be passing them out. And I want to thank all of our 12 partners who have worked together to really make this a very exciting November full with several activities. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, quick comment?
Yes, Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Christina. You just reminded me Innovation Park Board, we just got a primer on social media. Everybody uses it in different ways. If you all have hashtags or links or anything that would help us share that more and be more active, I mean, just as you get into any of the types of events, if y'all would send us an email just to kind of highlight how we could share those things best and connect them back with OEV, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, good deal. Next up, so many of you were out at the grand opening of the Capitol Cascades pedestrian footbridge, a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful celebration of a facility that not only enhances connectivity, but helps stimulate economic vitality, appropriate for the conversation here today. I am truly proud for what was inherited from my predecessors in terms of through your leadership, in terms of the significant leadership for that entire corridor and that which we are building. And so as we continue to grow the Capitol Cascades Trail, we continue to gain awards for those investments and the impact, the positive impact of our PowerPoint shutting down. No, the positive impacts that these investments really prove in return to the vibrancy and the vitality of our community. I think we have a brief presentation first on that opening, and then we will receive the...
It's actually longer than that.
Yeah. Seamless. Play the video.
Cue the video.
Seamless.
Nice.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon Henry, and thank you so much for having us here today. I'm excited to be here to present Cascades Park with the Florida chapter of the American Planning Association's 3rd annual Great Places in Florida People's Choice Award. I want to thank all of you for setting time on your busy agenda to celebrate this award. I would like to take a minute to introduce some of the other folks from APA Florida who are joining me today. Alex McGee, our Executive Director, Barry Wilcox, our Capital Area Section Chair, Devin Levins with the Capital Area Section, and Maverick Fitzgerald, a student at FSU who submitted the application.
Thank you.
Before I move on, our president, Andre Anderson, sent us a few words.
Oh, that was it. It's right.
Good afternoon. I'm Andre Anderson, and I'm president of the Florida chapter of the American Planning Association. I'm sorry that I could not travel to Tallahassee this afternoon to join in this award presentation and celebration. The Great Places recognition was originally started with the American Planning Association identifying great places across the country as part of National Community Planning Month, which is October. This year's theme is community engagement. The Great Places designation is the gold standard in terms of having a true sense of place, historical and cultural interest, community pride and involvement, and a vision for the future. The Florida chapter of the American Planning Association started this program 3 years ago to recognize great places in local communities voted on by people. We are thrilled that Cascades Park is this year's winner, joining past winners, historic downtown Fernandina Beach and downtown Mount Dora. Well done.
as Andre said, we opened our nomination process for the Great Places in Florida Award to people across the state. Anyone can nominate a great place. We received a record 37 nominations this year. We were pleased to have judges from a wide cross-section of disciplines to help us narrow the fields. Groups we partnered with to help in the selection process was AARP, the Florida Recreation and Parks Association, the Florida Bicycle Association, and the Florida City County Management Association. Nearly 3,000 people weighed in on who would be this year's great place in Florida, and Cascades Park emerged as a people's choice, and for good reason. Cascades Park is an ideal example of innovation and collaboration, something we as planners aspire to do each day. Judges were most impressed with the successful integration of planning and design, with a good mix of uses integrating the environment, local history, public access, and infill, all by the way of creative funding. Since its completion, Cascades Park has emerged as a new social center in Tallahassee, bringing new vitality to the downtown area. It clearly exemplifies the characteristics of a great place. Therefore, APA Florida is pleased to present Cascades Park with our third Great Places in Florida People's Choice Award and celebrate all the great planning and community involvement that has gone into creating this wonderful place. Congratulations.
We want to thank you very much for recognizing the city and the county and our region for this award. Just a couple of quick comments. It seems like, and many of us remember, it was just yesterday we actually pulled up the old Meridian marker and put it in storage so that we could start construction. It wasn't long ago. Every single person at this table had a part in that. Commissioner Richardson, while you weren't on our commission at the legislature, I know you were an integral part of helping with those cleanup efforts. But more importantly, the staff back there and the staff sitting in this room and the staff that were affiliated with us in their offices, we could never have come close to producing a park like this without the thought, the process, and all those people involved that are still here and also some that have gone. So for Blueprint, I want to thank you very much. But more than anything, thank you from all the folks that were involved. We appreciate it. Commissioner Lindley?
Thank you. I just want to say I stand in awe of the planners. Those of us at this table were really good at analyzing, judging, critiquing, talking, working through, taking the flack when people just see a dollar sign and don't see a project. The planners and designers have a vision all along that really what they go through to bring it to life is astonishing. It's such a talent, it's such a gift, and I thank you for making it so for us. We really appreciate it and love Cascades Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you so much.
I believe we're on consent now.
Yes, sir.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. And now we are on presentations.
Absolutely, and I'm going to pivot to our new OEV director to introduce the item and our consultant team.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 4 seeks your approval for the first ever long-term economic development strategic plan for Tallahassee-Leon County. After your review and action today, it'll be my privilege, along with that of our OEV team, to implement this vision toward reality. You previously directed the Vision First advisors to prepare this plan, and they're here to make a detailed presentation today and answer any questions you might have. It is now my pleasure to introduce one of the best economic development minds in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, in fact, the entire country, Gray Swope and his team.
Thank you, Al, for that introduction. We're excited to be here today and to present the final strategy for our work and deliver to you for an implementation piece. Before we start, I would be remiss if I didn't say, and I know this is our second time to meet, but if I did not say thank you. thank you for the opportunity to be a partner on this project. As Al mentioned, we do a lot of work outside this state. I think right now we have clients in about 16 different states, but this is home. And to be able to have the opportunity to do something in partnership at home, it means a lot to you to be on that team and as a part of this team. So we took this at heart because it impacts our lives just as everybody in this room. And so we took that to heart in our process. I want to introduce our team at Vision First Advisors. So we have most of the team here. The one person that's not here is Molly Flons. She's our office manager. She's the one that keeps us running and on target, and she's not here. And of course, she is in our Tallahassee office taking care of business this afternoon. But I do want to introduce four of the others, the other three that are here. Starting with Nancy Blum Heights. Many of you know, a resident of Tallahassee for many years and very active in the community. It's been great to see her in this process, bringing her years of experience into the community, from the community into this process. Melissa Medley, also a resident of the city and county. Melissa is sitting here, came with us as part of the Enterprise Florida team, and as part of Vision First as a principal of Vision First Advisors. And then Griff Salmon, we're working on him. So Griff is over here. He's a resident of Orlando, but we're working on him to be a part of the team. We even have an office for you here, Griff. So when you're ready, we're ready to move him up here. So let me start with, there we go. A couple thoughts about the plan before we start. A gentleman that is in economic development shared with me just recently something that I thought was very, very profound. That quality of life starts with a quality job. And I think about that, and I think that's what this plan's about, is how do we continue working on things that provide a quality of life for the citizens of this county and city, but we do that by enhancing and finding quality jobs. It drives everything, and we think about that throughout this process. So what we're about to deliver is our approach, Vision First Advisors. So we've been in economic development business combined for about 90 years in our team. We've seen a lot of different plans. We've been through a lot of strategic planning sessions, countless. And then we've seen at the end of the day a lot of product. Our approach has always been not to provide you something that sits on the shelf, it looked good, we had some great ideas in it, but we never implemented. Our approach from the very beginning is to take your lofty ideas, your vision, to look at how to put that into not only a strategy, but a plan of action for your new Office of Economic Vitality. So as you look through the plan, you will see in the strategies not only details of the strategy, the thoughts behind it, the research behind it, but you have an action plan to deliver. And so for Al and his team, they have the roadmap to start. And I will tell you that this plan does not take the place of Blueprint. You've done great work on Blueprint. It does not take the place of that. This is the continuation of it and focusing on the economic development element, so the Office of Economic Vitality has something to start working with so they can move forward in their work. We looked at all parts of this community. I learned a lot about our community. And I will tell you, some of the assets that I've discovered in this process, I'm now out using when we have downtime, which has been rare lately. But and so it was good and eye-opening for me to look at all parts of the community as well. We also looked at all the players that are involved and how they're working together and sometimes how they're not working together. And from that, we put together this strategy. Now, our approach, as I said, is actionable, but we always look at it in simple terms as you got to crawl, you walk, and then you run. And so once this is in place, doesn't mean that it's the end of it. You're starting. You will walk and you will run and you will continue to enhance and be flexible enough to, in some areas you're going to tweak as you move along. And so together and with your team here, the structure that we have in place, I think you have a great future and a great place to really continue the fantastic growth of this community, but also do some things that are very strategic, that will enhance the quality of life through the quality job. So with that, we'll get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit is the scope of work. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, what I'm going to do is just kind of go through this and give you a view from 30,000 foot, and then we can come back and answer questions and get in details if that's okay, because you've got a 121-page report in front of you. Not going to go through that line by line. I think everybody in this room would appreciate that. But what I'll do is give you some of the highlights, and then we will come back and answer your questions if that's how you see that. So in the scope of work, the way we always look at it is we first of all look at what are your previous initiatives. What have you been doing in economic development? How has that worked? We did some interviews on that. We looked at your previous research. We looked at existing plans. We've looked at past plans and some of your the history that's there. We gathered input from numerous sources. We conducted that research. We analyzed trends. We did the findings. We compared to what's happening in other parts of the country and look at that in our scope to work. And we continue to get feedback through the digital surveys. Now, all while we're doing that, we're coming back to Ben's team, Office of Economic Vitality, and said, hey, this is what we're finding. What else we need to know here? Is this something that we need to do a deeper dive? So the sounding board, back and forth, is a true partnership in this process so that we make sure that we're following that process and that we're not going down a path that's not going to be beneficial for us. And we're not wasting time and we're not putting something that's not doable. So we continue to use that throughout the process. We looked at what would be the metrics as part of the scope of work. We can deliver you a plan, but if you don't have measures, then you cannot evaluate as a group, are we making progress or we're not. We put the marketing recommendations together, and that brings us today where we are today, so with the IA and you guys to deliver the plan. So I mentioned about gathering input. We spent a lot of time with the communities, as I said. We did over 50 one-on-one meetings in person with individuals in this community. We did 7 facilitated sessions with large groups, walking them through the process, getting input, gathering that input. And then we did also the digital survey with over 700 residents that participated. So in all, over 1,000 people provided us input from around the community into this process. So this piece, this is not our findings. This is what we heard. And so they're perceptions. And you have to look at this from a standpoint and you say, well, that's not true. Well, it may not be true, but it's a perception. So if an outsider, whether there's somebody thinking about retiring here, whether it's a new resident that's thinking about moving a business here, or somebody that wants to go to school here, these are the perceptions that they might see. And so I give you that in that context so you'll know how it's being used. So if you look at some of the things that we found, and we provided in a traditional SWOT analysis, but just some of the things that came out of those interviews that none of them is surprising. We shared some of those with you. There, as far as economic development and the different entities, there's kind of institutionalized silos, people not talking to one another about a common strategy. We have our group, we're focused on this, just continue to fund us and we're going to do this. The little silos all over the board. We also heard back about the lack of a shared vision for the county and for the city together moving forward in economic development. No common definition of economic development. That kind of leads to the other two things I just mentioned. People define economic development by as many times that we set by somebody individually, they defined it differently. So we heard many thoughts about what economic development should be and should not be. We also, continue to hear, and this is evidence that, we're reliant in this community very much on government type jobs. Not a bad thing, but it's something you need to be aware of, and how do you build and look at maybe some diversification in that strategy. We also heard over and over about assets in this community. I have to share with you this story. So we travel in and out of this community quite often. And often, if you're going to be gone for an extended period, we'll take a taxi to the airport. I was riding back the other day with the taxi driver, and he started talking about the mag lab here and why can't we do anything with it. This is somebody driving a taxi. And it very much resonated with me about assets and people recognizing their value, but what do we do with it? It's well known that we have assets, but it's also well known that we haven't as a community positioned them to be very strategic and lead to the type of quality jobs that for everyone in the community that leads to a better quality of life. And so that's just one example of that. And the last point on there, which leads to, and we'll talk a little bit as far as the challenges, we heard a little bit. While there's many good things happening at our airport, cost continues to be a barrier for in and out of travel. I can tell you specifically in what we do in our business where our clients, our expenses are paid for by our clients, that becomes an issue sometimes in being able to compete because my expenses are maybe a little bit higher than another's because of that cost, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The other thing we did is we always try to benchmark. And we benchmark for several reasons, just to kind of give you an idea of what are similar markets doing. Now, you'll look at these, and we chose to look at Alachua County, Florida, which is Gainesville, Dane County, Wisconsin, Escambia County, Florida, that's Pensacola, Greenville County, South Carolina, Pulaski County, Arkansas, that's the Little Rock, that's the capital. And I'll tell you why we did this. We look at aspirational benchmarks. We looked at some that had similar geography, such as being in the Panhandle. We looked at a capital that had the same size, a capital in another state, same size market. And then we looked at where you have a research institution and what they're doing, in particular in Madison, Wisconsin. And so that is in the report. You can kind of look and contrast. And the thing that you want to pull from that is, what are the best practice, what are the things that it's telling us and what we're doing good, and then what can we need to be improving on. So if you look at talent pipeline and you compare to some of those areas, you'll find, as we all know, we have a high education attainment here in Leon County and the city of Tallahassee. That is a huge strength. And we've heard about that over and over in some of the reports and accolades about highly educated workforce. We continue to see that. It shows up in the numbers. You can, it's the trust but verify. You can verify and quantitate that that is a highly educated community. You look at employment and industry, just as I said, we're just heavy relying on state government as well as universities. That is, you can look in here, there's other examples that of communities that had some of the same large employers in those sectors, but they've been able to find ways to diversify. So there's successful strategies in what they're doing to diversify their economies and things that we can learn from and lessons to learn from in employment. As far as living and travel trends, I think again, the one big issue there that we have to point out is on average, our airport is a lot more expensive than other locations. And I know you're addressing that, and I don't want to beat up our airport too much. I'm not here to do that, but I'm telling you that is a business issue. And we have to look at it because I know if it impacts our little business, it's impacted many others and how they go about and approach doing business. But the improvements and the things that we're doing there are very positive, and we want to continue to do that and look for ways to, that we can enhance other options here to help on our cost. So with that, and kind of looking at that, as I said, there are a couple things that became very clear. The no common definition of economic development, and there are many actors in economic development all acting separately, doing their own thing. And so as we looked at that, we thought about how can we start this definition of economic development that's common. And the way we look at that is really through three, for lack of a better word, buckets of job opportunities. Where do jobs come from? Market opportunity, that this market generates opportunities for entrepreneurship. It's a market to serve. There's franchise opportunity. All that business formation strategy that's there. And then you look at the facilitated, where there's opportunities to make strategic investments and you see a return. Tourism is a great example of facilitated strategy for economic development that create jobs. You know, when there's visitors here, there's heads and beds, there's people that are doing things in the community because they were visitors spending money, that's creating other jobs. We know that. That's facilitated. And then on the competitive side, those are those projects that, when you have the opportunity, they're looking at Tallahassee, Leon County versus another location. you're competing for that capital investment in those jobs that they're shopping. It's reality. And you have to figure out how to play in that space as well. So if you look at everything we do that kind of fits into those three areas in how we approach economic development. And so we provided a definition of what economic development might look like. And I'm not going to read it to you, but it's there on the slide, it's in the book, but you can see what that definition is. Actually, I will read it. A coordinated course, I'm going to look up here, Griff's going to fuss at me for not putting on my glasses. A coordinated course of action across all local assets and resources to facilitate the development, attraction, and cultivation of innovative businesses and associated job creation to position the economy for sustained, directed growth, raising the quality of life for the citizens of Tallahassee, Leon County. So that is kind of an aspirational definition of economic development, and I think that fits across the board kind of what we learned. As far as from that, this is what Melissa and our team calls the North Star. This is that vision of where we're all going, and that definition of what is your core purpose. Well, it's pulling all these missions together, and so that there's just one central message, and it helps drive collaboration. And so that aspirational core purpose is we grow innovation. Tallahassee, Leon County is the model to which other communities look in, orchestrating new and existing programs into an optimal infrastructure and collaborative ecosystem for fostering idea generation, business formation, and sustainable growth. So those will help all the entities that are involved to kind of have a clear direction on where we're going and how we can work together. And so with that, that leads us into the strategic goals. So it starts with really with 4 overarching goals of the plan. First, collaboration. You've heard me mention that before, and we continue to mention that. That is your key to success, is how do you collaborate together. The second is we want this area to be known as a business generator. That should be, hey, Tallahassee, that's where business is being generated. That's where business wants to be. It is a place that supports that in such a unique and beautiful quality of life that that's where we want to be able to start our business. You want to 3, alignment, align these assets for the common goals. And 4, leverage your existing framework that you have. You want it to be more efficient, and you also want it to be used for effective allocation of resources to meet your goals and objectives. So we start with the strategies and tactics. So the first of those is 6 economic development initiatives. So if you look at these initiatives, the 6 of them, this is where your crawl, walk, run comes into place. Each one of them is laid out on something that you can do immediately to start with. So there's 6 strategic initiatives that are there, from business formation, tech transfer, business retention, business recruitment, the creative economy, and talent development. And then there are 3 cross-cutting strategies that fit in all of those 6 initiatives, if that makes sense to you. Because each one of those 3 plays in some role in those 6. So let's start with the business formation strategies. The key that we heard over and over again is access. So the strategies that were built around business formation is to provide access. How do I start a business? We have many people here that can provide that. We have so many resources here on how to start a business in this community. From entrepreneurship programs, the things that we're doing are just incredible. But how do you align those and help everybody understand, how do I access that? Where do I plug into that system? And we provide you a strategy on that. The other thing we heard a lot about is access to capital. Again, is it real or is it perceived? Some of it in the case I think is real. For a startup business, that's always a challenge. But it's also that education process to understand, how do I need capital to grow my business? And so I'll give you some examples about that. A lot of people define that as just having cheap space. cheap space to start a business, if that's your strategy, then it's just going to sit there and you're going to become a real estate agent. I mean, that's not your goal. Your goal is to get people up and out of that space. So you have to look at things beyond just cheap space. So if you look at what are the opportunities that are there, from that capital formation, so to speak, strategy. You look at, and we provide an idea for, there's a way that there's a partnership. There may be a partnership where you have a community investment corporation that partners with one of the local banks to provide something as a loan guarantee program. We gave you an idea of what another community is doing in that space. We want you to be thinking about how there's partnerships and using your resources to collaborate to do that instead of inventing something that's totally new, but use what you have in a way that can provide access to that capital. The other piece of business formation is looking at how do you streamline your services. And so that's what we're doing there is how is government being responsible? How are you doing things to support that small business? And so that is a piece of that as well. The second component is inclusion. And I want to say there that what we put in the plan is more than just access to government contracts. If you're really going to have something focused on minority, women-owned small businesses, that it has to be more than just that. It needs to be more holistic and look at how you help people to start those businesses and target those efforts, but you do so in a streamlined fashion and utilize all the assets that are out there, that are people that are doing that in a way that you achieve your objectives. Tech transfer and commercialization. There's no doubt that this is a strategy for this community. I mean, we knew that from day one walking into this. You did too. There's so many assets here. But what we found out in other communities, this is very true. You may have these assets, but if nobody's kind of pulling these people together and to work together, it's just going to sit there and you have individual objectives. And so OEV now has the opportunity to work with all these components and look at how do we collaborate to move forward with our allocation of resources and working together for a strategy. Now, there are many ways to start on tech transfer. You have got between, Florida A&M University and Florida State, TCC, you have so many opportunities to start in here. In fact, it's so many that it bothered me a little bit looking at it that you'd probably sit there like a deer in the headlights and go, where do we even start? Crawl, walk, run. The crawl, start with MagLab. The magnetic technology that you have in this community with the employers like Danfoss, you have an opportunity that has a competitive advantage like nobody else on this planet. That's the one you start with. Now, I know when you look at that and at first you might say, well, there's this, and this there too. Yeah, they're there. But you start one model and show how it can be successful, and then you have the template to start the next one. Doesn't mean you ignore it, but we're going to really focus right now on where we have a competitive advantage and take it that market opportunity that's there, leverage it for job creation and research dollars flowing into this community. You've got the major players in this community that are willing to help and they're wanting to help. And so we put together a strategy to start with that as part of it. On business retention, to our team, that's a no retainer. I mean, no brainer. I think a retainer. No retainer. It is a retainer. Business retention. But as I said, it's a no-brainer because if you're going to do anything, it really starts with taking care of what you have. Now, a lot of people, that's all they say, and there's no really systematic approach to it. If you're doing your business retention and expansion program correctly, there are things that are derived from it that drives everything else. The first is market intelligence. So we as individuals and businesses, we spend lots of money for market intelligence, don't we? In our backyard in economic development, if you're not doing a BR&E program, you're missing the opportunity on market intelligence. You're talking to your employers, you're talking to your existing business about What are their inputs in the process? What are their outputs? Where are they going? Understanding that whole system and how it works. And then what pieces are missing. And you go, wait a minute, you say you don't have this. Well, I know a gentleman or gentlewoman down the road that can come here and be a part of this ecosystem that can help each other. Market intelligence comes from it first. It's also, what a great tool for customer feedback. If you're talking to your existing businesses and you as in leadership roles in sitting here in this room, you have an instant focus group that can give you input on what are you doing in delivery of your services. You know, we really like this program. We really like what the city's doing or the county's doing in this service. But hey, here's where we need a little bit more help. Again, it's an instant focus group to get customer feedback. And then it lends itself into your marketing strategy. You will discover in that process what are your competitive advantages. You may think this is a competitive advantage, but when you hear from an employer, oh, no, that is not true. This is what you need to be thinking about. So the business retention expansion strategy is a big piece of that. We, again, laid out how that should look like. And then business recruitment. Often, economic development is defined just as business recruitment. It's not. But conversely, if you don't have it, you're missing a big piece of what you should be doing. Just say, oh, we don't do that, we're going to grow from within. Well, if you grow from within, I will tell you that businesses turn over, things change, and you always need to be looking for new capital investment coming into your community. So it is always a recruitment and retention process, always. And so far as the business recruitment piece, you know, we've looked at the things that you have in this community that are very marketable. I just mentioned in the magnetic technologies, the things that you have, the opportunities that you have for more capital investment in research and development, more capital investment in actually people doing things with that technology here, from advanced manufacturing to doing other research type facilities here. There's lots of opportunities there in business recruitment and retention. There are also other targets that we've looked at and talked about, things that you could think about as a community. And the OEV team will continue to look at that, refine that, and drill down, and really see where we have great opportunity for recruitment. It is a proactive strategy instead of sitting here and saying, hey, hope somebody shows up at our doorstep. The other piece that we got real excited about is something we call creative economy. I want you to hear, when I say creative economy, most people sometimes think of that's just the cultural activities that we benefit from. No, this is really taking some of the things that you're doing and leveraging it from an economic development perspective. Architects, engineers, they're all part of a creative economy. Cascades Park, you just won the award for? Engineering, landscape, architect. Very creative. It's part of your creative economy. Businesses that are popping up at Railroad Square, that's creative economy. It's taking talent and arts and doing things. You know, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm kind of one that has an eye for art, and I enjoy that. There are people that I've met from this community before I even knew I was coming here that do some really neat things that are part of that culture in that creative economy in other places other than Tallahassee. And so you have it in your backyard, and you have a real opportunity to continue to leverage that and do the cultural activities that go with it and know how they connect. And so we lay out how this hidden economy that is here has a real opportunity and fits in beautifully with your quality of life and the things that you're doing in the community to do that. So talent pipeline. You know, as you look at what's happening in the workforce today, labor is going to be at the top of the list. Workforce is so critical in how you're going to be able to maintain and retain talent and even recruit talent. Well, we have in this community talent that passes in and out so often there, and there's an opportunity there. And so we lay out strategies on the retention of talent. We also look at talent development for all skills. And so there's some missing skills that are here than in things that we may not think about. So we think sometimes of very lofty of the higher education opportunities, but there are also other opportunities where just some enhanced skill development provides a whole new opportunity for income for a sector of our population that needs skills to move up to the next level. And so again, we've laid that out in our plan that's part of it. So cross-cutting strategies we talked about, so taking these 6 initiatives and looking at it from a marketing and comms standpoint, these are your cross-cutting strategies. As I said, we want the community to be thought of as a business generator, as an ideal location when it comes to terms of Office of Economic Vitality and what they're tasked to do. So if you look at the 6 initiatives, each of them will have its own comms plan because they have to stand on their own objectives. And so each of those will have its own marketing objective, its own comm, but the overall strategy will be blended in so there's not just a bunch of renegade plans out there. It all fits. We also will look at, as part of this, is refining, as I mentioned a minute ago, that targeted industry list. Looking at where are the sectors that we really ought to be focusing on and doing some very strategic targeting of comms and marketing to those particular groups. So the next piece is really outside the strategy. How are we going to put it together? And that's the structure. So, we've been looking at economic development organizational structure. I know I've been looking at it for over 30 years. These guys have been too. And I will tell you that in community, there's no cookie cutter approach to a structure. It's not one size fits all. And we heard a lot about this. And I can tell you in the organizational structure, I've seen that are straight line type structures that have worked great, but I've also seen some that had just failed. I've also seen other structures that are fuzzy, that, I don't understand it, that have worked beautifully. At the end of the day, the structure all rests upon the leadership sitting at this table, the leadership at OEV, and the staff that's sitting around this room, and how they integrate and work together. Any structure can work, and the community can make it work. So I share that because at the end of the day, this has to be the IA, your structure that works for your community. And I hope you get what I'm saying, because so often I'm with other people and they go, we like what that other community looks like. Let's just copy them and put it here. It will not work doing that. You have a framework you've been working from. Look at ways that you can take the structure that's laid out. How do you enhance it? How do you do that to achieve the objectives? And we put that together for you. So we looked at it and said, okay, how can we take this structure, enhance it so that you can be competitive? And so we look at, the first thing is, we need to kind of separate competitive projects from some of the other part of that process. And so we've done that. We have one piece that only looks at competitive projects, and those are if Apple wanted to move here today with a new R&D center, that is a competitive project because they're going to be looking at somewhere else in addition to just this county and city. Those have to be handled different. Then you have to look at the structure and how do you take some of the business formation and how do we align things together and run up through the structure. And so you do that through 2 primary bodies that we've laid out. So the first of those is called the Economic Vitality Leadership Council. For lack of a better word, they act as an executive committee. We've laid out of who should be on it, what sectors they represent, but they're there to kind of monitor progress, provide the feedback that's necessary into the process for the staff at OEV to move forward on, and more importantly, to utilize the input from the Economic Vitality Coordinating Committee. That input coming up through that system where it's then filtered with those players and then used to put into an actionable plan is how that worked. Again, I'll give you an example of a minute. So the Economic Vitality Competitiveness Committee, that's your 23 members that are on there, and would be asked to look at tasks that are related to the 6 strategies. So let's go back and let's take an example that comes out of business formation. I talked about capital access. So you have the group of 23 where you have, maybe as the example I use, DOMI, maybe a representative of a local bank, that can talk about in that committee of how that might look, then rolls up to the group of 7 that then fills in the blanks, and it's a recommendation to move forward, but it's all tied to your strategy. So it continues your alignment. And then the other piece of that is the capital projects cabinet, the competitive projects, I should say, and that's the 3. That's the one I used as an example if you had a competitive project that was looking at the community. And lastly, I'm a big believer, all of it has to be transparent. You have to have accountability. You have a commitment over 20 years that would probably generate, is estimated over $90 million in this sector. You want transparency, you want accountability, you want the metrics that are there to do that. But you also at the same time want to be able to look back and say that was a holistic strategy, that we all work together, just as you've done before, aligning those goals, looking at short-term, mid-term, long-term objectives of the plan, and being able to perform with metrics and being measured. We also put in place, and I'm not going to go through this, but we also put in place, moving forward, a suggested timetable for these, starting with year 1 and then year 2 and beyond. That's a lot to cover, and I just hit the highlights. Again, we're here now to answer any of your questions.
I think at this time, if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and take speakers, and then we're going to open up for discussion among the commissioners.
Thank you.
Our first speaker is E. May Hutt. And if I could just remind you, we have 3 minutes, and I'm sure somebody's keeping track of that.
I can do it.
Thank you, sir.
You want me to do it? I can do it.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name's E. May Hutt. I live in Southwood. I'm an owner of Golden Lighting, a manufacturer of residential light fixtures here. First off, I would like to say that I like a lot of the initiatives in this plan, and it's a great start. You have proposed some fantastic tactics and action items. However, I do not see measurements for the overall performance of these strategies. I see an implementation plan with a list of action items and some metrics tied to specific tasks. This plan needs some performance monitoring with overarching measures to success. What does success look like? How do we as a community know if we're winning? For my business, it's easy to define success for my team. We need to sell more lights and generate more revenue. A strategy I might have to support that goal would be to attract new customers. But ultimately, if the new customers that I attract don't generate more sales than I lose, then my work was ineffective. Of course, sales aren't the only measure for my business's health. There's profitability, ROI, turnover, and risk. Taking an example from your plan, in the talent initiative, you want to retain more students from the local universities and colleges. One of your metrics is to host 2 job hops a year. That isn't a metric, that's an action item. A metric would be a number of students that go through the program, actually got internships or job offers, and then ultimately stayed. However, overarching metrics for the whole talent initiative would be something along the lines of unemployment rates, unfilled positions, median wages, investment, blueprint investment dollars per job created, and so on. Perhaps you already have plans to put these metrics in place. If not, please take the time to establish a baseline of numbers that are indicators of our economic health and relevant to the 6 goals outlined here. Austin, Texas has a great outline for a performance monitoring plan, which I am happy to share. Perhaps we can form a coalition that would review and suggest the overarching measures for this plan. I'm also happy to volunteer. Once those measures are established,
30 seconds.
the Office of Economic Vitality could track and report the progress annually. Then after 3 to 5 years, see if we've moved the needle. If not, use the data to pivot. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I do.
And thank you to our timekeeper for keeping us alert on the 30 seconds.
Hey, I do what I can.
Good job. Jim McShane.
Name and address for the record, please, sir. You got 3 minutes.
You do that very well, Nick. I think we're going to point you for that.
Jim McShane, 6678 Chevy Way. All right, I just want to say that I appreciate the work and the relationship that I have with OEV at this point, and look forward with this unveiling of working out some things. I'd just like to bring up the fact that in the talent section, I also think that it doesn't fully reflect the relationships that are already happening and already moving forward, and the activities that are moving forward too. That's a place that both Chairperson Kim Moore and myself on our Career Pathways Council that was established in order to move some of this data forward are already doing, and we have OEV's participation on that committee. So I would suggest that after this is approved and all, that we sit down and have a conversation further about identifying some of the relationships that are already there with FSU, FAMU, and TCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Our next speaker is Reggie.
Boudier.
I knew that. I might remind you, you have 3 minutes, and Nick Maddox is keeping track.
I'll give you a warning in 30 seconds.
Reggie, we're going to limit you to 2 minutes.
Hold on. Say that.
You all are so kind. Reggie Boutier, 106 East College Avenue, Suite 700. Does that cover it for you? I'm here on behalf of the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. I'm currently the chair. And before I get started, I just would ask everyone that is a member of the chamber, serving on the board, previously served on the board, or as a chamber staff to please stand at this time.
This is a message that we're going to be all of us, too.
So in the audience, just to kind of give you an idea, I just assumed the chairmanship on October 1st. Kathy Bell is here as our past chair. Rick Moore was past chair to Kathy. Heidi Otway is my chair-elect. So we're here today because we believe in this path going forward. We want you to know that our board met in the normal course on Tuesday and unanimously voted to support this strategic vision for our community. And we want to compliment Vision First advisors for their work. I also sent a letter to Commissioner Ziffer and copied everyone at the table confirming our support. So hearing the other speakers and recognizing that the chamber over the last year has gone through its own strategic planning process with the help of North Highlands Company, significant process in which we are now implementing effective October 1st and rolling that out. We also recognize that it's just the beginning, right? This is an opportunity for all of us as a community to come together in ways we've never done before. And we're very excited and energized at the chamber. All of our members, we have 1,400 members representing over 50,000 employees. And I think it's in this strategic plan that this is not going to be possible unless we work together. The chamber is prepared to work with you, and we look forward to it, and we thank you. And we look forward to developing this with you over the upcoming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Neil Fleckenstein.
Neil Fleckenstein, 13093 Henry Beetle Drive. Just want to thank Mr. Stucks for giving the chairman's report for the CAC. I had the opportunity to spend 2 weeks hiking out in Utah and just couldn't turn that down. So I'm not speaking as the chairman of the CAC at this time, though, just a few comments. I've only been back in town a couple of days, so I haven't had a great deal of time to look through this. I do know that Mr. Swope and his team did a fabulous job on their presentation to the CAC a couple of meetings ago. It was very informative. I didn't get to see his last presentation. The plan itself is very impressive, extremely detailed in its scope and its direction. I really appreciated that early in the document in discussing the strengths of the community. One of the strengths that was highlighted is the natural resource base that supports our community, as well as the cultural resources in our community. Those are two just vital parts of what makes Tallahassee, Leon County such a special and unique place. And I'd ask that you keep these in mind as you're making the decisions that you make, both as the IA and as your respective city and county commissions, that we need to have this broad perspective. I think these are all, as I said, the natural and the cultural resources are just vital to our quality of life and also contribute to our community or contribute to our economy. Just one example, we work with FSU on an economic impact study of the hunting properties in Leon County, Thomas County, and Jefferson County. It's $150 million a year economic impact, 1,400 jobs. So you can have a healthy economy while you're also protecting your natural resource base. One thing that jumped out at me was, I think, the quote on page 34, The Coming Jobs War by Jim Clifton, which noted, "Have your whole city wage a war for jobs. Everybody in charge of anything needs to focus on job creation. If they divert their attention, vote them out. If the bike path doesn't have anything to do with job creation, there is no bike path. If rezoning improves the job outlook, rezone." I think that that ignores much of what makes a city great. I think we do need to have a slightly broader perspective than just single-minded focus on jobs and only jobs. Again, there are a lot of other aspects to our community. What I think should motivate us all as we get up in the morning is how can we make this a great community for everybody in the community. So I would just ask that you maybe keep that slightly broader perspective.
30 seconds, sir.
Thank you, sir. We do recognize the vital importance of jobs and economic development. That has to be, one of the things that we have at our forefront, but also having this broader perspective on what makes our community great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Deloge, you had a comment?
Well, just after the speakers, that's when we start.
I think we're all done with speakers,
Okay.
unless there's someone else out there that hasn't turned in a card.
Yeah, no, I'll kick it off, absolutely. Gray, thanks, good work, and Ben, this is really, it's encouraging, I know, I can see the volume of work that went into this, and Al, welcome to the team.
Thank you.
I guess my comments, Ime was spot on. I mean, I think really, we need, this is the building blocks in the grand scheme of things, but call it a dashboard, call it whatever you want. You need 2, 3, or 4 things that if I call or I see somebody on the street and they say, hey, you got $90 million in your checkbook over the next whatever years, is it working? How do you measure success, and what are the benchmarks, or what are the parameters, or what are the measurements? And it shouldn't be 50 things. It should be 3 or 4. And as she said, maybe it's unemployment, maybe it's, I don't know. Those are but I feel pretty strongly that we ought to have that going forward at some point. This is clearly how you get there.
Right.
But then when we look back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, I want to be able to say, well, here's what we said, and we're moving in a positive direction. And the measurement gets better as you refine it over time. But that's a spot-on comment as far as how we see where we're going. So I just feel pretty strongly about that in the grand scheme of things. Thanks. Good stuff, though.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, actually, the last speaker sort of kicked off where I was coming from when I looked at all of this. First of all, I wanted to say to Gray and his team, thank you very much. Fabulous. I don't know that this microphone's on. It was the one that
I don't think this one works, yeah.
Yeah. And I so want everyone to hear what I'm going to say, so I'll get the better microphone. Thank you, Commissioner Lindley.
You're 2.5 minutes into your 3 minutes, Commissioner Miller.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Commissioners, for
Right,
keeping
Nick?
up with that. I'll keep that in mind during the meeting. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to the team and all the work that they put in. They have given us a tremendous amount of detail. The citizen input clearly indicated that our citizens and the folks that were interviewed are interested in a balance between economic development and quality of life. And that, to me, goes to the issue of identity. What makes us different than every other community on the block? I think that, and one of those things is that we have a fabulous community of life, a fabulous quality of life in our community. And I wanted to point out that if we focused all of our resources every day, if we all wake up thinking, how many jobs did I create today? If we did that every day, we would not have had Cascades Park. Because Cascades Park is all about, well, it's about stormwater management, which is, I don't know how many jobs that creates on its own, except for engineers. It's talent, arts, a park that has trails and the bridge, and yet this is now where everybody takes their guest when they come, where businesses, as Linda Figgs said at the grand opening, look around and see what you've done. This is where I bring my people, trying to recruit people to move to Tallahassee, Florida, to work for an international company. She brings them to Cascades Park, and they are impressed with Tallahassee for its identity. And that's why I think that larger identity is a critical piece that I don't see reflected enough in this plan. And so I'm going to basically dial, well, and then I'll put on the record my overarching concern that I've expressed to Ben, and so he can put his hands over his ears because I know he doesn't want to hear it anymore. But I don't want to get to the point where all of the blueprint projects are focused through the lens of economic development. A lot of those are retrofit projects. A lot of those are projects that sort us out of problems that already have developed in the community. They may not create any jobs. They will improve the quality of life and the functionality of our city. Because I do agree with one of the premises of this report, and that is that infrastructure is critical to economic development. If we don't have a functioning airport, and in fact, going back years and years, we were on the short list for a big insurance company, mid-90s, I'd say. And I had the opportunity to hear that. The problems that they expressed, the reason they didn't come here, was actually our low unemployment rate at that point. It was so low they were concerned. Secondarily, our transportation system, which has been vastly improved, and our airport. Those are the three things that hurt us. So we've got to look and see what has caused us to lose business in the past, in addition to just focusing on our aspirational goals. So now I'm just going to move from there to the committee, the three committees. Okay, the first one, the executive, or the one of three, that's, you know, that's what it is. But the other two, the report, and I apologize because the thing is so long that I can't, I'd like to have 5 different pages out in front of me, but looking at the list of the folks that are going to be on there, I really feel that there should be a little bit more out-of-the-box thinking. I don't want to recreate the old Economic Development Council, which if you load this thing up with businesses from top to bottom, then I'm concerned that that's going to be the result that we get. And I was interested in the observation that the government had too much control and we needed to go to the private sector and involve business more, because we have actually made the opposite move. We've gone from an EDC that was entirely a private effort, and we're going to place basically an OEV, which is much more public oversight. We all as a community had reasoning for that, and so I don't want to basically backtrack. So when you're putting together this committee, I really would rather see more people that are a little bit community organization type folks. I don't know if I mean Kona. I don't think I mean that. I mean people that do business other than more entrepreneurial folks. I can't see that one person can possibly represent the entire entrepreneurial community. I would like to nominate our wonderful friend from Golden Lighting, though, because I think she'd make an excellent addition to this committee. People that are going to be, it's important that people be able to follow along with the conversation, that they be able to follow along with the business talk that's going to go on at the table. But we have a number of other organizations in our town that would be able to do that, and I've always stressed the fact that I feel that our nonprofits are a tremendous, tremendous piece of our economic puzzle here in Tallahassee currently. And so I would like to see them have more than one seat here, because there are a lot, that's a gamut of nonprofits, everything from human services to housing to you name it. It's, you know, there's a nonprofit for it in Tallahassee, and probably an association, a state association that's based here. So I don't feel that that sector is represented enough. Also, to speak to the quality of life issue, and to the business issue, and I think Commissioner Dozier can vouch for this, Sustainable Tallahassee should have a seat on this committee. They have business people that are perfectly capable of following the conversation and contributing heavily to the conversation, and they would also contribute a little bit different perspective, I think, to, green industry. They could bring the whole view of the green industry development. That's one of the biggest opportunities that we have here and nationally. So I think that they need to be represented too. I'll stop with that.
Mayor
I
Gill.
think my 3 minutes are up.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first, a big thank you to your team. I think you all have presented to us a very strong and comprehensive view of where we are, and also a bit of a roadmap about where we go. I also want to pay homage to what has come before us to get us to this point. I'm thinking about all of our longtime staff and community volunteers that have stood up what has been this community's economic development strategy, past, leading to the moment that we are. I think that's been real helpful and instrumental to getting us to this point. I will make some observations, but I want to temper it by first saying I don't want us to muck this up before we get out the gate. So they're just comments to be absorbed as the staff will. But I trust that a great deal of work and thinking have gone into this. As we've read it, I think there'll be adjustments, and we've got professionals with real, in Al's case, 3 decades of experience. But there's a whole team with a set of experience that we're going to have to trust to kind of lead us through this a little bit. And so I'm actually not going to make anything in the form of a motion because, but some caution. And the first caution for me is I'm a bit concerned about the vertical nature of this office. And what I mean by that is we have the OEV director, we have ACMs, we have place director, we have county administrator, city manager. There are a set of committees that inform underneath that, and then there is the decision-making body, which will be the intergovernmental agency. And I just want to make sure that we have a very, very clear front door to economic development in this community for folks who come from outside, but also for those who are within our community, in part because we're elevating our investment and reinvestment in what already exists in our city. And so I would just ask the staff to be very conscious of flagging that for us. I know once you set these things up, it's really hard to back off of it. And so I think a report at a certain period of time around structure, because the only other way that I could imagine it being is that OEV reports directly to the decision-making board with the committees that work underneath. Not suggesting that we do that today, but I'm trying to think in my mind, how do you remove too much vertical, such to the point that it gets clogged and slows down what I think we're trying to create, which is a much more nimble system for economic development growth. I love that there was an emphasis on these clustering of, I think the Mag Lab was just one example of, man, this is an amazing asset in our community. What happens if we're able to have a very targeted strategy of recruiting businesses and growing businesses in our community that benefit by having that technology in place? I would only add to it because it calls out magnetic laboratory at FSU specifically, that the joint school of engineering that exists between FAMU and Florida State, if you just expanded the definition from not just magnetic but to include sciences, because I think that takes in widgets and some of the other pieces of which we're well suited to take advantage of, that'll broaden it enough to be a bit more encompassing. Healthcare, we were a little mum on. It does show up in certain places, but we've got more nurses graduating from TCC, graduates of nursing from FAMU, pharmacists at FAMU, doctors from FSU. It's the largest private sector employer. I think Publix is the next, but then TMH. But if you added TMH, Capital Regional, and all of the medical related fields, it probably would easily be the first and largest employer in our community. Clearly, we have a foothold there, and I think we ought to name it in some clustering and figure out where the economic opportunity is there. This commission wisely, I think, decided that we did not want the plan here to be built and constructed exclusively for the $90 million of blueprint. Because one, that money doesn't kick in until 2019, 2020. And this group should have work to do between that time and even after that time, say that that $90 million gets assigned and we already know where it's going. Then they're just a sitting organization with no resources. So we decided to do $500,000 from the city, $500 from the county to begin an original corpus of $1 million. I would charge the staff to figure out whether or not that corpus ought to be bigger. And each year, should we be building up to some amount that allows the kind of real oomph that lets them execute programs with real resources to do it, to accelerate the economic development work. So we start with $1 million. I want to know whether or not there's an idea to increase that corpus, and is the way we get there by each allocating $500,000 each over a period of time until we get there. I don't know the answer to it, but I trust y'all to help resolve it. You all also identify, I'm going to short circuit some of my other comments and send them to you all in writing, but one that I want to give voice to is in this sort of community index and community analysis, you all point out, and I think aptly, and it's important to do so, the poverty rate in our community. And I think too often we treat the poverty rate as the soft social sciences, and I think it's an important part in the social sciences, but the poverty rate for our purposes from an economic development plan is jobs. And so a strategy that gets out, one, why is it so high? And when we're thinking about talent development, that we're not just thinking about talent development toward the higher end of the spectrum, but to give a shout out to the county and the Leon Works, hitting at all stratas of our society so that we can set a goal through this plan around addressing this poverty rate through a very targeted strategy of job creation that meets at that need. If that, to me, is a very easy corollary to whether we're being successful or not at some of this. I don't want it to remain in the sphere of only social sciences and human services, that I think it has a very direct role in our own community's economic development strategy. It's a big number to come off of, a big target, and if we could create some indentations in it, I think it would bode well for success. And then I would just echo the speaker, and we talked about this in our meeting, what does success look like? Because just as the previous infrastructure came under great community scrutiny, of how do we know when we're winning and where we're not, and sometimes this stuff is just it's fate, working together in some places, and in other places it's really intentional, long work that over a period of time it pays off. But we ought to, there'll be greater accountability because we're elected. But two, I think we just ought to make sure that we build in some reporting standards, some reporting out to the community that they know, look, this is that if we believe it's going to take us 5 years to stand this up and start to see some real dividends, then we ought to be honest and level with it. If we are not sure, but we're committed to the strategy and we think that it'll bear fruit over time, we should say that too. But the accountability doesn't go away simply because it's now come in-house. In fact, I think it only intensifies the scrutiny that this has such a prominent role within both the Leon County and City of Tallahassee government. But overall, again, I think y'all have done a great job, and I'm looking forward to the work of our staff in carrying it forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Chair Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, like you, I'm grateful for a report that has come to us. I was thinking about my first telephone that I was introduced to, my grandmother's house, and it had the old jet black phone, and you had to put your finger and roll it around. And then I remember when the push button came out, and wow, that was just awesome because it wouldn't make that much noise when you was trying to call a girl, beyond 9 o'clock at night, Nick. The rotary just got so loud, at night. I didn't want my daddy to hear me. So the push thing, it was great, and that was an advancement. And I thought about the caller ID and the cell phones now, and how far our phones have evolved. But basically, it's still the issue of caller and clarity and confidentiality, because we went from the party system, back then to. My concern with our report is that it hasn't tackled one of the more substantial issues, and I thought that Commissioner Miller's identity had been stolen, but all of her thoughts are intact, and I can't tell that anything's missing, Commissioner Miller. I heard you. Really great. And what we failed in this report to do is address the issue that was raised by Harvard University, and that is that ours is one of America's most economically segregated communities. And the failure to deal with economic segregation, and I'm not certain that anything comes out of Harvard is you can rely on it, even if it's competent. I don't know. Many people tend to think so, but I don't know. But it did identify Tallahassee as being economically segregated, and this report doesn't deal with the heart of that. It doesn't touch on that. I'm disappointed. We have to deal with that, and I'm wanting for us to go back with this report. And I realize that there's been complete silence. There's been a little muttering and mumblings after Harvard's report. But fundamentally, there has been no institution that has concretely dealt with that issue. And I thought that the metrics which Harvard projected, they're in the study, it's easy to retrace, it's easy to go back and look at what they were looking at. I'd like for us to accept the challenge of not leaving that as an indelible impression upon America that that's who Tallahassee is. I like for this new view, even though the telephones have changed from a circular to what Nick is working on over here, it makes a phone call. And we have a new instrument, and the acronyms, the language keeps changing about economic development, but the results are the same, economic segregation. So these new acronyms and this new language and the new colors on the pages, but the bottom line is, are we advancing? Are we lifting? Are we including? Is there circulation of our dollars within this community? That, to me, is the heart of what we ought and should be seeking to do. This report ain't it. It needs to go back. It has to go back and deal with that question. Otherwise, we were the housing agency this morning. We're the IA this afternoon. Some of us will become the Chamber of Commerce at another meeting, and the same ones of us will be the same members someplace else. So Commissioner Miller is right. We can't be incestuous in organization after organization with a different name, but the result. I like to see a process that involves our students. And we need economic development to begin with high schools. And like Leon Works was an effort to introduce students and to show them a kaleidoscope of options for careers. We should focus this right here for high school students and development, and Leon Works is something that really ought to be tied to this body or with this body, but somehow developing entrepreneurs at the 10th grade, 11th, 12th, that kind of thing, those partnerships, mentorships, all of those ships. That's what we got to have. I'd like to see that. I want that to be included in the report. We have a very close-knit and chummy associations, so much so that in terms of our accountability and the shrewdness with which we hold one another accountable, these lines of demarcation are not always very, very clear. But just to say that the data indicates that the black community here has not been fed well from the city, and the data suggests that the black community has not gotten 1% of the dollars expended with the public from the county. That's what the data says. We're not eating well, though we're paying taxes. Our Office of Minority Business with the county has been subsumed within this entity somewhere. I believe previously that it kind of set out with some kind of autonomy to give a report, to give a reflection, to make sure and hold us honest and accountable to the public's dollars being distributed equitably. Both the city and county's offices have been subsumed in somewhere in the mesh of this new organization. The city's office will no longer report to a city manager, and the county's office no longer will have a more direct route to the county administrator. And in terms of accountability and function of money being distributed to everyone equitably, I'm not sure that this report satisfies me. In fact, it doesn't. So, Mr. Chairman, my hope with the 3 points that I've lifted in my 30 seconds almost expired, I would merely say there is a desire that a report looks at the function of monies desegregating our economy, economic desegregation. Number 2, that we have a student component. And number 3, that the function and role of MBE, which when it was reporting directly to the administrator and to the mayor, it wasn't functioning very well then. And now it has no chance at all to be lost in the weeds of this big organization. I am concerned with those 3 components and ask that modification be made to accommodate our community's interests in these areas. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Lindley?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, a lot of the comments that we've made about accountability. I think this 12% of the blueprint is probably going to be the thing that most people think of as the whole blueprint process. And in fact, our income, we have 88% of our blueprint sales tax is going to be going to a lot of other things that are also going to be addressing jobs and infrastructure and quality of life. So I don't want us to overlook that and think this is the whole shebang, although it is going to get a lot of attention. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, and others, that we do want to keep ever present the poverty level, and that we want everything we do to lift all boats. We want it always to be conscious that this is not just to do what we know we'll have a great success at doing. We want to kind of do the hard things too, and that means reaching all sectors of our economy. Finally, I was very interested in monitoring performance, and Amelie, I appreciate your bringing that up. I saw, Mr. Swoop, you were kind of nodding your head at those comments, and I wondered if there are provisions in that I was missing, not hearing, that you could address on monitoring as we go along, how we're doing the performance and so forth. Is that something you can speak to now or talk to us? I mean, is that a possibility, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
You know, we addressed that in our report, in our plan, but we left it open because now is the time you get in the weeds and build the tactics. And so as you're building the tactics with each one of those and it rolls up into one of the sectors, then you can have an overall dashboard that measures. I think that some of the metrics that were identified Some are very big picture. And you look at a dashboard, you have to look at the whole thing. Some are very traditional measures that you'll want to look at. As you mentioned, disposable income. How are we doing on unemployment? How are we doing on filling jobs? I think with Career Source here, the things that they're doing, some of the metrics, they can be pulled in to look at how we're doing these together, again, as a collaboration. But until you get the tactics set, then those measures will then start being developed. But I thought that some of those are very good. Again, when you look at a dashboard, you have to look at all of it and understand that this is just, so often in economic development, we get focused on one thing. Mm-hmm. That's just employment. And that is just one indicator of many things you have to look at.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Commissioner Fun. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Commissioner Zephyr. I too think this is a fantastic start. I mean, I'm just reflecting on today. We have had housing and economic development that have been siloed, that have a ton of good things happen in our community for years. And today we had two huge meetings that push us in the direction towards more collaboration, and we're putting resources behind it, but we're not leaving out our community partners. This is fantastic. I will say a little bit, just to remind us of the earlier meeting, that I get what the person who told you that quality of life starts with a good job, but I think part of this and what we reflected on this morning, that getting to a good job is good education, good house, good health, everything like that, quality of life, it's part of that, and I'm glad we're doing this in the same day. It's good. I know I had a lot of concerns a number of months ago. I think this moves us in the right direction. I could list a lot of the good stuff in here that I won't even comment on, but just wanted to say that, I mean, from marketing to professional development, the research, all of those types of things, I mean, this is solid. And it really is what we see in other EDOs and other communities. And a lot of stuff we haven't seen in the past, and it is very honest reflection on where we've been, that we're all trying to do a lot of good things and work with each other, but we didn't have, just the best way to coordinate. We tried a lot of different ways, and we did a lot of good stuff. And that's one of the things I want to come to, because I do think that this gets us on the right track, but I have some questions about the specificity that are in the details and kind of where we are. And that I asked you guys about it in the briefing yesterday, so I just wanted to get a couple questions on the table here as we move towards framing a motion, I guess. And really, I was happy to hear the other comments, because I think it is reflected in a lot of your comments about the, direct report to the IA. And actually, I'll just start here. On this chart that we've got, this is page 98, the IA isn't actually mentioned on this chart of the committee structures. This is a public EDO now, so, and I mean, if I'm missing it, let me know, but I'm seeing the different committees, the OEV, the 6 key initiatives. I guess I will just pause there, because the IA is where we get the public input, right? And you mentioned it, Mr. Mayor, of, it's mentioned a lot in here that we need to limit bureaucracy and we need to have efficiency and effectiveness, but we're still a public org, so we want to balance that. I like how many more people will be involved in the task force idea, but could Al, Ben, one of you guys reflect on where the IA is in this and the public input?
The IA is core to everything that we do, very simply.
So why isn't it on this chart then? I mean, I'm just curious.
Clearly an omission.
All right.
Okay, but
I think we need to be clear, and that's where the public enters, right?
I understand.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I think the chart was specifying more from the Office of Economic Vitality and procedurally, but unequivocally, as reflected in the policies that you'll take up later on, as reflected in the ordinance, as reflected in the referendum, and on. The IA is core, the core decision maker for all expenditures that come from the local option sales tax, blueprint, OEV, et cetera.
All right. Al, did you have something, or? Okay, I thought you had a comment. All right, well, that's good right off the top. So I think a lot of the questions I got from constituents and others, and you all may have gotten some of the same emails, were about public input, the transparency, and where some of the existing programs were. And we talked about that yesterday, too. So Again, I see where the plan was coming from and the broad reflections on it, but I think in our language here, we need to be extra clear when it comes to that because other people are reading it, which is fantastic, right? So, okay, that was one. I won't make any other comment about the committee structure. I like the task force, other things, but 2 meetings a year. We talked about 4 meetings a year yesterday. I had missed the comment about 2. I'm kind of wondering if we need more meetings in the first year, quite frankly, of our committees and other things like that. We talked about that yesterday, just to keep us moving forward. We can talk about that in February, but it's something that stood out. But the other kind of big section of question I get is, and I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts on this. How should we be reading this plan? And I asked this yesterday. So the broader strokes, you know, the paragraphs that came as a summary before we got into the tactics and the metrics, I can get behind all of those. And I can get behind some of the tactics. But then you get into some of the tactics and metrics, and to me, there was broad differences. Some are very general. I could have voted for them today, no problem. Some of them were so specific or didn't reflect on what was happening already in our other partners. And when I asked you guys about it, how you were reading this, if we approved it today, Al, would it be your marching orders? And this is your plan, and all those 1 years, you've got the marching orders. And I thought you said that wasn't how you were taking it. But the option is to approve the strategic plan, and that's how it's written. So will you just describe that a little bit more, how you would view this plan if it was, if it was approved without any changes or anything today?
This plan is designed to be nimble. And first of all, I want you to know that staff understands the public accountability that we have, and that measures across the board need to be put into place so that progress can be gauged and decisions can be made. Now, the plan is a guide in some instances, identifying programs, identifying general strategies, and giving us some general guidance on tactics. And so what we need to do is put some more meat on those bones, determine exactly what those programs are going to look like, determine, some standards, and then standardize across those programs and strategies a set of metrics and measures that you feel comfortable with and understand and can interpret so that you know what our progress is.
Okay.
Completely agreed. It is the framework from which to build additional work plans, guidance that will come back to the IA for approval. For example, calls for a targeted industry study to be done. That's good structural framework. That's completely accurate. The last one was done in 2004. We don't misinterpret your approval of this plan to say, hey, go out and go ahead and purchase the study. For each of the tactics, we'll be bringing that back as is appropriate to the IA for consideration. With this as the framework, as Al had indicated, we also are then enabled, once we know that this is the structural framework, this is the strategic plan, under the IA's leadership that the community can fall behind, we can then come forward with next steps, with additional specificity in each of the key areas. The only thing I would add in terms of metrics is it was very important for us, and this I think gets a little to the specificity question. We had asked, even at the strategic level, that there would be key metrics where applicable and where appropriate to help adjudicate how we would perform even at the framework level, completely to the transparency point. And with the full expectation of full accountability, and also with the full expectation as we get the additional tactics moving forward, we'll have metrics, for those different components as well. So I hope that answers between Al and I your question.
It does, and I appreciate that. Those were my 2 broad questions about the decision-making structure. I think it reflects on others' comments and about some of the specifics here. So I guess I'll just go to the options here, you anticipated me. I told you there was one question we didn't have time for yesterday, and it was the target sectors and the funding for that. So I'll get to that in a second. But here is where I would be comfortable, I guess, and I think it aligns with what you guys just said. I am thrilled to have tactics and the metrics suggested there. I think that gives us a broad, a view of what a plan could look like as we continue to flesh it out, that we've not had that level of detail before. But just one example. Ben, you know, EDC, y'all were running the Entrepreneurial Excellence Program. Innovation Park just picked up the last piece of that grant. It's already seeking funding for others. The specifics, a entrepreneurial program will do X, Y, Z in this plan. To me, I just looked at them, you know, why not look at the existing, maybe improve it, maybe look at funding that. I mean, there was no reflection on that. The Minority and Women Small Business, the committee came, I mean, I'm thrilled that you guys agreed with those, the training programs and the mentoring. County had a committee last spring that kind of dug into that. Career Source, Jim mentioned that. One of the KCCI creative communities, there's a lot, I mean, this last 6 years, the amount of stuff that has happened is incredible. The list of incubators, you've made a good point about it's not just office space, it's programs. Well, 5 of the 7 that are listed have a lot of programs. Those are all pretty much new except for one. So we have accomplished so much. And the incubators and the second stage really stand out. Innovation Park just started a committee to do a 23,000 square foot multi-use space, meeting need for wet lab, dry lab, maker space. We're getting cold calls constantly. The demand is here. That's not really mentioned here, except in how entrepreneurs move through. So what I would be comfortable with is accepting this, but having more time to drill into those specifics, not approving those tactics and metrics as locked in stone, or even as the exact programs that we'll do. I think a lot of them are going to keep moving into the future. But I would say, where's the incubators? And I don't think we want to drill into that kind of detail today. Probably want to hear from, look at the more data, hear from the committees. You've got Imagine Tallahassee, the sales tax approved projects that you got to reflect on, right? We've got a lot of other things to build into this now that we got a great foundation. So I'm looking to the rest of the board. I mean, I'm just wondering how we want to describe this. But I would say option 1, approve the strategic plan as a draft to be reviewed in reference to sales tax committee approved projects, data, the committees, other things like that, and to be further refined by the IA with recommendations from all those sources. Al, do you think that would work as a kind of a step?
I don't want to. Just to,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to assume anything, but this kind of thing is always kind of a fluid type of thing to a degree. I mean, we're not putting anything in cement that says nothing ever changes. So I think to your point about making adjustments and is it fluid, I mean, I think that's
the way it's read by a lot of folks is more locked in than what I think the staff, that's why I asked that question. So I think we just need to be careful in how we approve it to meet where staff is, that's all.
As you come up for air every year, every 6 months or every 3 months and say, wow, that was a crazy, this is off because we've got more info. So anyway, sorry.
Al, did you have something? Sorry, Mr. Chair, I thought it was.
I think the plan is intended to be a continually evolving document. And because we are constantly coming back before the IA to get approval on, changes that might be proposed to the plan, I certainly don't read it as locking us into anything. I look at it as locking in an accountability structure. And if we make changes, we have to be accountable to the IA for supporting those changes.
I guess what I would say is I am not sure that everything that's laid out in there is where we might want to start. I think there's a lot more, like one more step in the review. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
I'm going to, in the queue is Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner, did you get a second? Maddox?
I had one more.
I know, the only comment I make is, and because what you said has validity, and that is people will read this, but no matter what we do and no matter what changes we make today, if we make changes, then they'll read it that way. And some people will say, well, wait a minute, does that put us there? It's a living, breathing document, in my opinion, and I think staff has suggested that. If you're going to make a motion, I suggest you go ahead and make. She has
No,
the floor still.
I suggested
okay.
if that would work to staff. I was asking a question. Thank you, Commissioner Maddox.
You still have the floor.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to option 3 and then I'll be done. But I am concerned that we're leaving incubators, second stage facilities out of this entirely. For example, this is not the starting point that I think reflects what we've done in past years and the starting point for how you just described it, Mr. Chair. So I am concerned about that, but I want to keep it moving forward too. Option 3, we got this $1 million. It's supposed to be a quick fund for recruiting. I think we probably recruit more if we do that target sector study. So I'm wondering if we have the discretion, if the board could pull out some money right now instead of waiting until budget year 18, because if we did that, we're not going to start the study till next October. It's going to be 18 months before we see it. So could we direct you to bring back an RFQ or RFP, whatever it might be, now to do that study? Because that is huge piece of this on the recruiting side. Is that acceptable?
It is acceptable. I would highlight, and it's in some of the materials, at the time that fund was set up, it was,
I understand what it was intended to, but
Correct.
the 12 of us dedicated it so we could change it, right?
Absolutely. That's part one. Part two, and it's in a follow-up agenda item. Should all of the targeted business program projects that have been approved thus far meet their goals? And should all of the QTI projects that the city and the county have approved thus far meet their goals? Over the course of 10 years, it would come to $960,000. I just want to be aware, if you're getting into sort of operationalizing a segment of funding, I just wanted to be clear on that.
Then I saw that, and if we pulled out, I don't know how much it would be, but the money to do the study right now, we got FY18 to put that money back in,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And wherever that money comes from. So, okay, I would make the motion for option 1, reflecting the comments that Ben and Al have made, that this is a process and that we need to look at existing programs and particularly incubators, stage 2, those types of things that may not be reflected in there and what's happening. Option 2 and option 3 to request a request for proposals, however that might be, come back in February and get the targeted sector study moving as quickly as possible in FY17.
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we have discussion on
Yes,
the
sir.
motion, I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah,
offer the floor to Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's sometimes unfair to the rest of us when motions get made before we have an opportunity to have discussion. Commissioner Dozier, so if you would consider that. I don't have a problem with the motion, but I would like to have had discussion prior to your motion.
yeah, I mean, amend, change,
No,
substitute,
that's
whatever,
not
yes,
the point.
yes.
The point is I'd like to have my discussion before your motion, is what I'm saying. Because I'm not speaking to the motion. I'm
Correct.
giving
We're going to have
general
conversation on that
comments
shortly.
on the entire issue. But I think this is a great start. I understand that this is a living, breathing document. It's a starting point. It's certainly not the end. I think this will evolve because there are many more people that need to be involved in this and to have input and to seek input from. I'm thinking just generally about those individuals out there who might do landscaping. I don't see them represented in the groups that were field tested, if you will, or feedback was sought from them. They may have a business that they want to grow or need assistance. And so we're going to have to continuously reach out to different segments of the business community to seek input as we move forward with this living, breathing document. We talk about FSU and FAMU and TCC as our primary higher education institutions, but there are others in the community. Kaiser does an excellent job of job training and preparing individuals for the workforce. So does the colleges that are represented on the TCC campus. So again, just to make sure that we've got everybody in the loop, one of the things that I talked about with Ben in our briefing yesterday was the importance of continuously refreshing the persons and the ideas and the energy represented on these committees, so that you don't have an individual on a committee for 8 or 10 years when there are others out there with lots of new ideas constantly coming into the market and can add to this discussion. And so that's why I see this document is as something that is fluid and will continue to evolve as we go along. I want to just lastly echo a couple of Commissioner Proctor's remarks, because I think they are important, in that if in fact, and you know, none of us felt good about that those Harvard study results and what it suggested about our community in terms of its economic segregation, I think this is a tool for getting us beyond that. I don't know that it necessarily has to be built into the plan, but certainly we can use this as a tool to get us beyond that if we target those segments of our community that we know are most in need at this point. That can get us beyond the economic segregation, creating jobs in those communities, and then that addresses other issues, crime and housing, and other issues that affect those areas where poverty, if you will, is an issue. And then lastly, you know, I too have had some concerns about our MWBE program and where it is positioned in the bureaucracy, and making sure that that office also has the flexibility and nimbleness to respond and not be buried and stifled in that bureaucracy. And to see that that program is rebranded such that it's not seen as a government intrusion, if you will, or burdensome, or something to be dealt with, but is an integral part of our economic development strategy to retain, grow, and attract MWBE businesses to our community. And so those things, I think, you know, if we address those, I'm fine with the motion that Commissioner Dozier has made to accept the 3 recommendations.
Thank you, sir. On point, Commissioner Lindley?
Just on point, I just want us to keep in mind that this 12% is not the shot of penicillin to cure all ills, and that both the city and the county have 10% of the sales tax referendum. We have 2% for our county lift program. So we can't lean on this 12% to do everything. I think the report is good. We've got a strategy. We are reassured. We're going to be working with this ongoing. We have to. It's our job. So I am ready to call the question.
Commissioner Maddox has not had an opportunity to speak, so I'm going to.
Thank you.
If that's okay. There wasn't a second for your calling the question, so we'll go a little
Thank
longer.
you. Actually, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to speak. I think as part of Commissioner Dozier's motion was to go ahead and fund option 3, I think, immediately, correct?
No, sweetie, I haven't made
To
plans.
bring back the proposal in February instead of waiting until FY18. So yes, to fund it this year.
Yeah, I'm not as much in favor of that, so I'll make a substitute motion of staff recommendation.
I prefer not.
Do you mind saying why, Commissioner Maddox? I'm just curious.
Well, when we set up that fund, we didn't set up for such use as you're trying to use it right now. I would like to keep it as it is. Why are we changing the use of it right now? What's the rush?
If I can make a suggestion that might help you with this, and that is, if I understand the motion correctly, your motion is for option 1 with your suggestions, option 2, and then option 3 is for staff to come back to us with an RFP at our next meeting, which we will consider. It doesn't mean that we are absolutely approving and moving forward at that point. It just means they're bringing back an RFP for us to review. We're not approving any expenditure today.
And the short answer to your question is that $1 million was for recruiting businesses.
Understood.
And we have not been successful recruiting businesses based on the targeted sectors on that 2004 study. So when I read that, I thought, well, if we want to really be successful and utilize this $1 million, considering what Ben said, that some of it has already been, or we've already committed some dollars, but we'll have funding in future years. But if we want to be successful recruiting, we need to get more specific into those clusters. That's exactly the good suggestions on the magnetic task force. That is exactly what we need to do. I am fully supportive of that. This just gives added data to refine those clusters even further. And I think it will give a boost and allow us to use that money more effectively for recruiting. That's all.
I didn't get a second anyway, but I will say that, I mean, it seems like it's the board's willing to move forward with that, and I'm fine with it, but I'm skeptical of what could come back, and I hope it's convincing enough to come
We're
back.
just having an RFP brought back to us. We're not moving forward with anything at this point other than the language of the RFP.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller, you had some additional comments, and then I'm just letting everybody know we're now at our 3 o'clock time period we were going to try to live within.
Well, for one thing, I've heard you all, I've heard two terms, accept and approve, which are two different things. If you, in my dialogue of, I'm sorry, I've heard two things, accept and approve, which are two different issues in my book on how to interpret governmentees. So I want to talk about that in a minute. I'm willing to accept this report. I'm not willing to approve this report. And the reason for that is that I've heard all of this about a living, breathing document, and yet there's nothing written down here about how that's going to be done. I mean, we've got, because our minutes are going to reflect that we approved this document, and that is going to be the end of it. I mean, with the comprehensive plan, that's a living, breathing document, and we have amendment cycles and so on and so forth. I don't understand exactly how we're going about living and breathing through this process over as we move forward. Secondarily, actually, at this point, I'm not comfortable with the committee structure. And I've just expressed that a minute ago. I don't think that it's as balanced and reflective of our community as it needs to be, even our business community as it needs to be. And I'm comfortable with you all going ahead and putting together those folks and coming back to us with a little bit more detail based on our comments today. But we got this report 2 weeks ago. I've had what was a 30-minute, maybe 35-minute briefing yesterday. And after 2 weeks of looking at it, and only one conversation that included all of us. I mean, I'd even be interested in having a city and a county workshop individually where we can all have the opportunity to go into more depth and then come in February with a solid report that has some, as you all said, meat on the bones, and have us approve that. So just my comments.
Without any further discussion, we do have a motion and a second on the floor to approve option 1, option 2, and for option 3 to have an RFP brought back to us for our next meeting to discuss. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes, however many we got here in one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. And we still have a quorum, correct? Yes.
Still have a quorum?
Okay. Next item.
Okay, thank you, and I'll try and be quick, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Next item is the last item under general business, and it's approval of the policy and procedures for your Office of Economic Vitality. You've now approved the structure. You've given us the direction to come back with a strong work plan. This is the document that's been created in accordance with industry best practices for all local economic development offices, inclusive of city and county policies and procedures. It enables us to be nimble within the structure that we have, as you would want us to be. It includes functionality, it includes the codification of the 2 existing local economic development programs within our toolkit, and it provides for authorization levels for the IMC to ensure that as projects are worked on and come forward, that we are very quickly and nimbly reacting to them, approving them as they may be meritorious for, and not slowing down the works whatsoever, while at the same time reporting back to the IA as is proper at your newly expanded committee meeting schedule. Happy to answer any questions.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? There's a second. Okay. Discussion? Having none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now, any citizens on unagended at this juncture? Having gone through all this, I want to make one comment as chair, because it was something that the mayor said. And as we go through all this and we establish measurements, it seems to me the best measurement we can possibly use, because we know we have a real problem in our community, and that is where that poverty line is. Because if we can move that line and impact that, then we'll have, you said it this morning, rising tide raises all ships. So for me, that's probably one of the most important measurements we can look at.
On point, I mean,
Yes, sir.
I spent last week doing some strategic planning with the National Association of Counties, all my committee chairs, and that poverty line, and how you measure it is debatable, but that's something that cuts across all of the different committees that we've got. And so it was, how do we measure that? What does it mean? And what's our role in local government to try and impact that? So, a good point.
And I'm
Yes.
sorry.
No, Commissioner, go ahead.
Commissioner Deloge appointed me to a workforce subcommittee for NACO, and I've been holding on to this all day, but the apprenticeship, talking about it as, the language we use matters. I'll sum this up. It's not that low skill needs jobs or something. There are good jobs in the trades. This is what Commissioner Richardson was saying. Whether it's housing or here, I hope we get really consistent with that language that there are so many good jobs out there, apprenticeships, others, and this is what's really going to get into those sectors. So I appreciate you bringing that up too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great meeting, Gil.